Feeling anxious? Struggling to fall asleep or shut your mind up at night? Most people are cutting dairy to clean up their diet. But what if removing it is actually making your anxiety worse? Let's start with what matters most, the facts and the fix. So if you only stay for a minute, you're going to leave with value. Dairy is a very complex food, and one category of constituents that it has or components that it has are known as peptides. That's a pretty hot word these days, but the peptides specific that we're going to be talking about are going to target the nervous system. And in fact, this peptide is a component of casein, one of the two protein groups in dairy, and specifically that casein fraction is known as α-casozepine, and it goes by the name Lactium. And Lactium is often the name that you'll see when it comes to the supplement side of this. But what's most important here is that this α-casozepine is going to bind to the GABA A receptors. Now, let me put this in context here for you. That's going to lead to calming your brain down, and it's going to have the same anti-anxiety, also known as anxiolytic, effect as medications. You're also, with the dairy, going to have the whey protein component, which is loaded with bioactive peptides as well, and these are going to support the bacteria in the gut. They're going to translate that into production of neurotransmitters, specifically for today's conversation, serotonin and GABA, two of the main calming neurotransmitters, and they're going to support relaxation, mood, sleep. But I want you to understand as I'm sharing this with you that not all dairy is going to be the same. Pasteurization and A1 milk are different than raw A2 milk. And that also means that there's going to be a difference in the casein structure, and that difference with the pasteurized and especially A1 milk, the A1 being the most important part right now, that's going to lead to production of what's called beta-casomorphine 7. Beta-casomorphine 7, morphine, right? Hear that name, is going to lead to slower motility, inflammation, and dysfunction or imbalance of the microorganisms in the gut. In contrast, when you look at raw A2 dairy, it's going to lead to a maintenance of these bioactive peptides that I've been alluding to that are supporting your neurological health, and it's going to promote a calm, just a general sense of calm and overall gut balance. So if you're in the camp where you've written off dairy, well, I'm hoping this is going to pique your interest and maybe even start to change your perspective. Now, I want you to note that I'm just getting started. So if you like what you hear so far, well, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and make sure you leave a comment. And you might as well stick around while you're here so you can learn how one of the most understood foods could help restore your sense of calm naturally. Now, if you've never watched one of my videos before, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Arland Hill. I'm a clinician and a rancher. And for the last 25 years, I've helped folks just like you regain their health by implementing lasting solutions that put food and movement first. It's also why I started Harvest Hills Ranch, where transparent food is not just a tagline, it's actually who we are. We are currently facing an anxiety epidemic. And if you find yourself in this scenario, you've probably looked for answers and maybe you haven't found good solutions. Well, today I'm going to be introducing one to you specific to food, and we're going to dive deeper into dairy. I've already given you a little bit of a prelude here, but I want you to understand more about just the epidemic because that may help start to answer some questions of why you find yourself where you're at. Guys, modern stress is at an all-time high, and it's not going to go down. And that translates into your body as higher cortisol. As cortisol levels go up, your GABA goes down. Now, I mentioned GABA previously, but let me delve a bit deeper into GABA because GABA is the primary calming chemical in your nervous system. Think about it as the brake pedal for your nervous system, if you will. Now, if you translate that and we look at the internalization of stress, if you will, it's going to create an overactivation of the hormonal loop between your brain and your adrenal glands, and it keeps that loop activated. We don't want that loop activated on an ongoing basis. It's okay to activate that loop for short periods of time, but then it needs to stop. And if you find that you're in a constant overstressed state, you're in fight or flight all the time, you can't keep yourself in relax and digest most of the time, you may also find that you're a personality who can be a bit wired but tired. Like your brain's wired up, it's just ready to go, it won't shut down, but on the same hand, you're low energy, you're apathetic, you don't have motivation. How does that all balance out? Well, it can come down to exactly what we're talking about around this chemical GABA. Now, when you think about anxiety and GABA, understand that for most individuals, this is not just anxiety. It's insomnia, it's memory loss, it's brain fog, it's depression, and it could be also many other things that are associated with it. In fact, these implications of low GABA levels, beyond being just overexcitatory, can also affect your blood sugar. So there's neurological implications with blood sugar and your nervous system. So that can be a double whammy, if you will. And when you think about GABA production, GABA is made by the bacteria in your gastrointestinal tract. So if those bacteria are making GABA, then that just one illustrates how important it is, but it also begs the question of, well, if they're making it and you're still having symptoms of low GABA, what's going wrong there? Well, you could be looking at things like chronic gut inflammation. You could be dealing with the consumption of processed foods. These are going to be things that are going to disrupt GABA. By the way, they also disrupt serotonin. And when you don't have these nutrient-dense foods in place, for example, high-quality dairy, that can often worsen this deficit of GABA. Now, let me talk you through this disconnect that seems to be around dairy, because many suggest that dairy is a health-damaging food. And the problem with that is that it's not given context. We need context in this conversation. So I'm going to start you out with an analogy. Let's use a battery. Let's just take a 9-volt battery, right? You've all seen the square 9-volt batteries. If you look at those two batteries, let's say we've got two Duracell batteries. We look at those, and one of those batteries is brand new coming out of the pack, and the other one is already drained. It's been used. It's no longer operational. And you look at those two side by side, unless you have them in something that requires that battery, you're not going to know that one is dead and the other one is completely charged and ready to go. Well, this is just like milk. If you're looking at raw A2 milk right after it's come out of the cow, and you compare that to pasteurized A1 milk, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. But they are very different in their activities and how they're affecting the body and how the body manages these. And this is why you can't have this conversation around dairy without context. So let me go deeper with the context for you, and let's start with pasteurization. The first thing to note about pasteurization is that it's going to denature enzymes. It's literally damaging the proteins here. So one of the other things that it's doing in addition to that is that it's killing off the beneficial microbes. Those beneficial microbes are, when you consume that raw dairy, those beneficial microbes are populating and modulating your gut. They're actually promoting overall balance. And that means that the activities that are associated with the microbiota, whether it's producing nutrients or neurotransmitters or modulating the immune system or offsetting the onslaught of other bacteria that are coming through your GI tract, it's helping in all these different ways. And when you kill those organisms off, well, you don't get that benefit that should inherently be in that food. In addition, the pasteurization is also going to alter the amino acid structure, so the basic protein structure of that food. And that's going to translate into a loss of the natural function of the food. So remember, these are health-providing foods. They're health-generating foods. So you think about things like enzymes or immunoglobulins, which are your immune system protein, or tryptophan being broken down, all of these being degraded. That tryptophan is going to be the precursor to serotonin. That's kind of the big picture. If you dive deeper and look at the two protein fractions, the whey and the casein, Whey protein is going to have reduced digestibility, so it's not going to be assimilated as well. Some of the bioactive peptides, the active health-promoting components in the whey protein, they're getting damaged, they're getting decreased. One of the examples on this would be something called lactoferrin. Lactoferrin has a wealth of information behind it in terms of how it modulates the bacteria and how it's just such a beneficial constituent as it relates to human physiology. And then you have the casein protein, where you're going to end up with fewer bioactive peptides as well, and that includes the α-casozepine that we've been talking about and that I introduced to you, which can have a calming effect. I'm going to speak more about that momentarily, so stick with me. Now, that's all the pasteurization problem. Well, what about the A1? Well, when it comes to A1, right, you've got the beta casomorphine here. That's going to have a opioid-like effect, which means that it's going to slow down the transit time through the gut. You're going to potentially see more increased inflammation as a byproduct of that. And the gut-brain is not going to, that axis between the gut and the brain, that communication pathway is going to be impaired. So you're going to start getting some miscommunication there. You're going to get poor neurotransmitter production. And all these things, if you're damaging the microbiota are not there in a balanced manner, and you're not producing these neurotransmitters that you need, and you're already dealing with anxiety, all this is going to do is make it worse. It's not going to help turn this around in any way. So that brings us to the solution. If that was the problem that I just laid out for you, then let's talk about what the solution is. And this is all coming from the perspective of dairy and how dairy can help offset your anxiety. So the first thing that we need to note is that raw A2 milk avoids the beta-casomorphine 7, to be more specific with that. BCM7 is how it's abbreviated sometimes. And with that, it's also going to contain and maintain the α-casozepine in there, which, if you look at it from a supplement standpoint, Lactium is the name that you'll find that as. But let me tell you more about the α-casozepine as it relates to what it does. Because specifically, it is binding to, if you've ever heard this name, benzodiazepines, right? That's a class of medication. But there's also benzodiazepine receptors in the nervous system. And so literally this casozepine is going to bind to these benzodiazepine GABA A receptors. So it's a little bit different than the medication, which is why you don't see the downside with the dairy or with the supplementation that you see with the medications. It's giving you the calm, but it doesn't give you the sedative effect. So there's not going to be any of that. If you're using this for sleep, that grogginess, or even if you're using it throughout the day, you're not going to experience that grogginess effect from it, that hangover type of an effect. All you're going to see associated with this is you're going to have more of just a calm, mental, relaxed state. And this is why that when you look at the use of the Lactium, this active ingredient in various clinical trials, you'll see that it reduces cortisol. It's going to show an improvement in sleep quality. And listen, let me be straight with you on this. My approach is food first. So I would emphasize to you to consume dairy here. I'm telling you about actually dairy and what dairy contains with α-casozepine, but you can also extract α-casozepine, also known as Lactium, out into a supplement form. And if you want to begin with the supplement, there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. Some people may need to do that based on the scenario of where they're at. If you're going to do that, then you want to look at somewhere between 150 to 300 milligrams per day. That's going to be your effective dose on this. It's just a really easy option here. It works if whole milk consumption, say for example, for some reason, if that is not an option for someone, then this still remains an option for them. It's best to use this about an hour to two before bed, and it's going to maximize that GABA activity, which is going to promote rest and sleep. And I'm going to put a trusted source that I have for you on this down in the video description. So if you need something, if you're thinking, man, that sounds like something I really need, I've been struggling with anxiety, I've got that for you down below, so just go check that out. Now, if you want to use dairy, raw A2 dairy, and I really like the raw A2 dairy because you get so many additional benefits from it. it is just such a massive beneficial statement for your health to consume dairy. It just delivers so much in such a unique package. If you're going to use it for the anti-anxiety or anxiolytic effect that we're talking about here, you really need about 2 to 4 cups per day to be able to accomplish that. And that's assuming that you have healthy digestion. If you don't have healthy digestion, you may need to adjust that dose. And those could go up, it could go down depending on what your presentation is. Additional whole milk is going to have some added benefits for anxiety. I've been suggesting this and alluding to this a little bit as we've gone through. But one of the things that I would point to here is that it's going to be a modulator of your microbiota. And it does that through the whey protein component, the wheypeptides, those bioactive peptides in whey, lactoferrin, alpha-lactalbumin, beta-lactoglobulin, just to name a few of these. Those are extremely important here. They're going to feed the lactobacillus and the bifidobacter, so you probably heard those names when it comes to probiotics. And those are also going to be producers of tryptophan and the tryptophan for serotonin synthesis, but also the GABA directly. So they're helping with that. Dairy also contains oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharides are prebiotics. They feed the microbiota. They're giving them the energy to do what they need to do. And that's going to result in a restored microbial diversity. You get better neurotransmitter production. And for you, that's going to translate in a reduction of anxiety, but also in terms of improved sleep. And just from a micronutrient standpoint here too, things like calcium, magnesium, the B vitamins, vitamin D also plays a role in this. These are all found, vitamin A as well. These are all found in dairy, and these can be extremely beneficial to starting to move you in the right direction. And if you consume this in the morning, maybe the thought process here is that you're trying to replete your daily neurotransmitter need. So, that just depending on when you prefer to have your milk consumption, do what works best for you and gives you the most results. That would be my recommendation here. And I do have a few caveats that I want to point out to you. If you are lactose sensitive, Lactium can still be an option, but you could also consume raw A2 kefir or yogurt. That would be something that I would recommend. In fact, I will put a card up here for you to show you how raw A2 dairy could actually fix your lactose intolerance. There's a bit of misunderstanding about lactose digestion as we get older, so that video will help explain that to you. And then if you are dealing with histamine problems or H. pylori, Lactium might be the better option until you reintroduce milk once those nutrient defenses are back in place or your immune system function in your gut has started to show some improvement. And just remember that when you're dealing with a pasteurized product, that not only are you denaturing enzymes, but you can also see that there's an increase in the conversion from histidine to histamine. So pasteurization could be a player in this. Plus, the enzyme that breaks down histamine, one of the enzymes called DAO, the one that gets the most attention most of the time, DAO is dependent on B2, manganese, and copper, and those are also lost when you start to consider pasteurized products. So raw A2 is going to be your better strategy here. Sometimes the foods that you've been told to fear are the very ones that our bodies are missing. And if you're dealing with anxiety or restless nights, remember that A2 dairy and the peptides that are found in it provide the help that can restore the calm from the inside out. So thanks for watching, and if you found this helpful, don't forget to like and to share with someone who's still fighting their biology instead of trying to feed it. And if you want to know more about the misconceptions of some of nature's most trusted foods, well, go ahead and check out this next video that I recorded for you.